New Zealand passes law making it easier for transgender people to change their sex on birth certificates.
Here's a summary of the article.
New Zealand's rainbow community will be allowed to change the sex recorded on their birth certificates without providing evidence of a medical procedure, after a bill to recognise the right for gender minorities to self-identify passed into law. While self-identification on birth certificates was introduced in 2018, applicants had been required to prove they had undergone medical treatment to align their sex and gender identity. This law change will make a real difference for transgender, non-binary, TCAT, PWI, LGBT, and intersex New Zealanders, Tineti said. The country joins roughly 15 overseas jurisdictions that have made changing one's sex on documents simpler, including several Latin American countries, and European countries such as Denmark and Spain. It reported that 5 out of 6 participants, or 83%, did not have the correct gender marker on their New Zealand birth certificate. In the 18 months before the provisions come into force, details will be worked out, including consultation on who will be allowed to support applications for young people, ensuring sex markers on the birth certificate include non-binary and cultural options, and determining what the requirements will be for anyone seeking to amend their sex more than once. New Zealanders born overseas will not yet be able to access self-identification, because the changes apply only to New Zealand birth certificates.
This post received a score of 3,600, with an upvote ratio of 83%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
People change their name and the parents adoption, step, foster parents listed on their birth certificate all the time. Some may think that, being a birth certificate, this document is some sort of immutable medical record. People keep talking about doctors using these birth certificates, but they literally don't. The only use for these birth certificates is for legal ID, to verify citizenship and age to the government and employers in the case that the person hasn't used their birth certificate to get another form of ID. There is no more reason for the sex on these birth certificates to be immutable than there is for the name and parents.
Apology if I am missing something. But wouldn't it make so much more sense to have a rebirth, gender declaration certificate issued when someone has decided to declare their gender? Then that could be used for the same purposes instead of amending a birth certificate? This would also then make more sense for those who are non-binary, as they could also have the same declaration certificate issued. I just think for medical and historical records, this makes so much more sense, as long as it would be valid in all the same ways, for the same uses as the original birth certificate would be.
The documentation changes are to avoid being outed by employers or other personnel that simply just don't need to know someone is trans. Trans people go to their doctors for their HRT, so the doctor knows they are trans.
That makes sense. Thanks for the realization. We just are not there yet in society in terms of disclosing, being out, being comfortable and risk-free for those who have transitioned. Strong discrimination and anti-hate laws, along with a change in cultural attitude, will hopefully get us there for the future.
Agree with you. There are a lot of people that simply don't want trans people to exist, and it's important to protect their identity as much as possible.
For anyone thinking this is a medical thing, please understand the way it works here is to change my driver's license and update it to current and correct details they ask for my birth certificate. I needed to go through family court in NZ prior to this law, and I can't, as I need a passport to travel back to NZ. To get a passport with correct details, I need to update my birth certificate. Doctors don't check your birth certificate, and transgender people aren't withholding medically necessary information. The most important thing is that the law to change sex markers on birth certificates already existed for a long time. This law just modernizes the process, removing judges and courts from the equation and keeping it between medical professionals and relevant, qualified people.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.